Why wasn't Ukraine militarily prepared to counter a Russian invasion? Henry Bradley. The vast majority of humanity was utterly unaware of how prepared Ukraine was made for this invasion, including Putin. Outside of Ukraine, the world remained dismissively ignorant when the little bald dictator who sells cheap gas started changing gears in 2014 when almost overnight Putin started sending Russian special forces and nasty Wagner private military mercenaries into southern and eastern Ukraine and quickly annexed the Crimean Peninsula. One night in March 2014, small forces of veteran Russian soldiers, who had definitely not been teachers, bakers and candlestick makers, mere weeks before seeing their first frontline combat, managed to conquer a valuable region with very little loss of life. From this moment onwards, Ukraine prepared for war with Russia. While the world focused on the sluggish global economy that struggled with repeated setbacks including Brexit and a suspicious Chinese flu that keeps mutating, this resulted in reduced defense spending in most of the NATO member states and likely encouraged Putin's hubris. All the while, the Ukrainian military was fighting a savage conflict against Putin's forces who were fueling an armed separatist insurgency in eastern Ukraine. What better practice for a Russian invasion than proxy war, fighting against Russian-trained and supplied insurgents for 8 whole years? When you take this into account and then put all the other pieces together, Ukraine managing such a feat of exemplary military preparation isn't such a surprise. What other pieces, you ask? Operation Orbital, from 2014 until February 2022. Because make no mistake, a few NATO member states stepped up and started paying attention when Putin started getting frisky in 2014. Sweden, Holland and the US sent hundreds of millions of pounds in light weaponry batches of iconic US Javelin and Stinger missiles started to be supplied to Ukraine. But if reports coming out of Ukraine are anything to go by, it was Operation Orbital that changed the game. Crack British light infantry units like 3 rifles were dispatched to Ukraine to train and prepare the Ukrainian army for the type of fighting they would face if Russia invaded. Promising Ukrainian soldiers were selected and trained to a decent standard by some of the finest professional light infantry troops on earth who were specialized in this theater. Not just the rifles, elite paratroopers from the tip of the Spear 16 Air Assault Brigade were dropped into Ukraine. The caliber of the highly trained professional career soldiers sent to help the military of Ukraine prepare cannot be understated. Some of the finest light infantry on earth, these formidable soldiers trained and introduced the Ukrainian soldiers and officers to use the latest next-generation light anti-tank weapon platform, the British/Swedish NLAW. A lot of the guys here are volunteers. They could be on leave, but they've chosen to come on this course. Certainly, with this course that we're running here, most of them have been through the Officer Academy in Ukraine. Second Lieutenant Nelson, 3 rifles. Ukraine, while not a member of NATO, was nevertheless fashioned into a tripwire region by the vigilant member states of NATO, with thousands of Ukrainian officers and soldiers trained in urban warfare tactics by some of the best light infantry soldiers on earth and equipped with the latest light anti-tank/armor weapons. It is almost like the entire country, and its brave people, were prepared specifically to ruin a Russian invasion. The British Ministry of Defence sent 2,000 brand new NLAW units to Ukraine in January 2022, merely a month before the Russian invasion, and these game-changing armor-slaying machines were dispersed to already trained Ukrainian light infantry and used on the front lines to devastating effect. The advanced Russian armored forces that naively raced to secure their objectives in the first week were in for a rude awakening. But it wasn't just the British. NATO member Turkey was getting in on the action too, selling Ukraine 20 extremely capable Turkish-made drones with lethal strike capability Bayraktar TB2. You can bet your house the ever-resourceful Ukrainians have put these drones to good use, using them to strike at the stalled Russian armored columns which seem to be moving slower than a severely overweight asthmatic who drunkenly signed up for the London Marathon on New Year's and didn't think to prepare for it, instead, relying entirely on repeating the daft mantra "slow and steady wins the race." Here is some drone footage of the Ukrainian military striking Russian armored columns with their highly effective Bayraktar drones. Can you imagine the fear the poor Russian conscripts must be feeling, stuck in these massive convoys that are strung out, barely moving, totally out of fuel, food rations running low, and all eyes constantly watching the skies, in dread? When the Russians launched the invasion 13 days ago, the Ukrainians quickly set about destroying all rail lines between Russia and Ukraine, blowing up a few key bridges across the Dnieper, and those tasked with defending the capital Kiev watching the snail-like 40-mile-long Russian convoy en route to Kiev have now intentionally inundated vast tracts of low-lying flatland between the city and the main Russian advance. Ukraine literally used the Kiev Reservoir to flood miles and miles of land in the surrounding area of the capital, turning what had been flat fields into a hopeless quagmire. While Ukraine prepared for war, with all the help it could get without initiating the damn war, old Putin was wondering why all the civilized heads of state seemed to be avoiding him like a bad bout of the aforementioned mutating flu. Putin wondered as he stood beside the British PM if her cold demeanor was because he had used polonium in a cup of tea to kill the turned Russian spy in London, or the botched use of chemical weapons on British soil in 2018 to assassinate another turned Russian spy. Come to think of it, why were all his spies turning? Teresa thought to herself, I can't believe I have to shake his hand, look at his stupid face. Bet his spies are too scared to tell him that we all call him Rat Putin behind his back can't wait until he gets assassinated like Rasputin. A better question than this one would be, how was the military of Ukraine so well prepared for this Russian invasion, without the world or Putin having a clue? 196.7K views. View 3013 upvotes. View